Have you ever stopped right in the middle of your day? Maybe you're, I don't know, pouring your second cup of coffee, or you're just sitting in traffic on your usual commute.
Right, just staring at the taillights.
Yeah, staring at the taillights of the car in front of you. And suddenly you wonder if the decisions you are making are actually yours.
Oh, that is a heavy moment.
It really is. I
Chip.
mean, really, truly yours. You look at the clothes you're wearing, the job you're driving to, the opinions you casually shared at dinner the night before, and you get this sudden cold sensation.
Like a glitch.
Exactly like a glitch. You ask yourself, are you actually the author of this life, or are you just reading from a script that someone else wrote for you a long, long time ago?
It's a terrifying moment of clarity, honestly. That sudden realization that the path you're walking might just be a paved road laid down by total strangers.
Right.
You suddenly feel less like a human being and more like a very compliant passenger on a train you never actually bought a ticket for.
Yes, a passenger. It's jarring because it demands that you completely question the very foundation of your daily reality.
And it's not a comfortable feeling.
Not at all. And it's something we are tackling head on today. We have a massive stack of material for this deep dive, a dense, deeply philosophical exploration into this profound, almost silent tension that exists in all of us.
It's a tension most people ignore their whole lives.
Totally. We're looking at the heavy, often unacknowledged friction between the external rules of society, what we generally just call morality, and our own deep internal moral compass.
This is such a necessary exploration because, at its core, we're essentially talking about the struggle for human freedom.
Yeah, we should clarify that, right?
Absolutely. We have to be clear, we are not talking about political freedom or economic freedom in the traditional sense here.
No, not at all.
We are looking at psychological and spiritual freedom, the freedom to exist as an original entity rather than, a replica.
A replica, yeah. So our mission for this deep dive is to really untangle this massive web. We want to understand how societal morality actually functions on a mechanical level, contrast it with this incredibly powerful concept of individual conscience.
Which our source material specifically refers to as Cindy.
Right, Cindy. And we want to figure out if there is a realistic path toward true, authentic self-realization. We really need to figure out how to break free from these copy-pasted social norms without completely losing our minds, or losing our place in the world. Okay, let's unpack this.
The foundational concept we really have to grapple with first is the copy-paste trap. The core philosophical argument here is bold, and it upends a lot of what we are all taught in grade school.
Well, it completely throws it out the window.
It does. The argument is that what we commonly refer to as morality is not actually some divine universal truth that we all inherently possess.
Which is how it's usually sold to us.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it operates as a set of external prepackaged societal expectations.
It functions like a massive invisible architecture, doesn't it?
A structural algorithm. That's the best way to look at it. Think of society as this unimaginably complex organism, a machine with billions of moving parts.
Right.
Now, for that machine to function without tearing itself apart, it requires extreme predictability. The primary function of this societal algorithm is not to make you a fundamentally good person in some cosmic spiritual sense.
Wait, really? It's not about being good.
No, its primary function is simply to maintain order. It needs all those billions of little gears to spin in the exact same direction at the exact same speed.
Okay, wow. So it just installs a localized operating system into every new human?
Precisely. It teaches us what is acceptable, what is shameful, what is worthy of promotion.
And what will get us uninvited from the neighborhood barbecue.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the insidious nature of this program is that it heavily incentivizes us to just copy-paste our beliefs.
It makes me think of downloading a massive software update on your phone. You get that unavoidable notification, it takes up half the screen.
Oh, I hate those.
Right. And you are presented with, 60 pages of dense, unreadable legal text, the terms and conditions.
And you, like the rest of us, do what everyone else does in that exact situation.
You blindly click, I agree, without reading a single word.
Nobody reads it.
Literally nobody. You have absolutely no idea what you're agreeing to. You don't know what data they're extracting, what microphone permissions you're granting, or what background processes you're authorizing.
You just want the notification to go away.
Exactly. You just want it to go away so you can get back to using the device. You accept the underlying rules just to keep the machine running.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism of societal morality. We click, I agree to the terms and conditions of our culture without ever reading the fine print.
We really do. We just look around and copy-paste.
We copy-paste the career trajectories, we copy-paste the relationship milestones, dating for a few years, getting engaged, buying a house, having 2.5 kids.
The white picket fence.
Right. We copy-paste the accepted definitions of success. And perhaps most dangerously, we copy-paste the acceptable political and social opinions of our specific peer group.
Because the alternative is just exhausting, honestly. Society actively rewards this behavioral replication.
The reward structure is incredibly robust. From the perspective of the system, replicas are highly efficient and easy to manage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If everyone runs on the exact same moral software, the system knows exactly how the population will react to any given stimulus. A marketing department knows how to sell you a car.
A politician knows exactly how to get your vote.
Exactly. Originals, on the other hand, are a nightmare for the system. They are unpredictable, they are noisy,
I ask uncomfortable questions that slow down production.
they throw a wrench in the gears.
Yeah.
So society builds a dual mechanism to handle this. You have the reward structure, praise from your parents, high grades in school, financial success, social standing.
All to heavily incentivize that copy-paste function.
But then you have the punishment structure, which is arguably much more powerful.
Oh, the punishment structure,
Right.
where the algorithm enforces compliance.
Yes. And it rarely starts with extreme measures. It usually begins with subtle ostracization.
Like the awkward silence at a dinner party.
Perfect example, the awkward silence when you express an original thought that defies the group's consensus.
Mhm.
Everyone just kind of looks at their plates.
Oh, I've been there. It's awful.
It is. Then it escalates to shame, which is a deeply ingrained biological fear of being exiled from the tribe.
Because historically, exile meant death.
Exactly. And if you continue to resist, it can escalate to poverty, loss of employment, or total social excommunication. We are biologically wired as social animals to fear that exile more than almost anything else.
When you lay out the mechanics of it, it is genuinely terrifying. But we have to be deeply honest with ourselves here. There is an immense psychological comfort in living the copy-paste life.
There really is. We participate in it willingly.
Yeah, because the burden of original choice is just agonizing.
The anxiety of total freedom is something philosophers have warned about for centuries.
Kierkegaard, right. The dizziness of freedom.
Yes, exactly. If society tells you exactly what steps to take, go to this specific tier of university, get a job in management, take out a mortgage on a house in the suburbs.
And hold these specific pre-approved opinions.
Right. Then you never actually have to sit alone in the dark and answer the terrifying question. What do I, as an individual entity, actually want to do with my brief flash of existence?
Wow. You are perfectly insulated from the terror of absolute freedom.
You trade your autonomy for a warm blanket of certainty.
But the hidden cost to the human soul is staggering. I mean, by constantly defaulting to this external algorithm, we slowly atrophy our internal capacity for truth.
We do. We become these hollowed-out, high-functioning avatars.
Avatars, yeah. We are technically alive, we're navigating the parameters of the system perfectly, but we are completely alienated from our own essence.
The psychological literature surrounding this often points to a midlife crisis, not as a sudden desire for a sports car, but as the moment the system's promises fail to mask that hollow feeling.
Oh, that's a fascinating way to look at it.
You have acquired all the rewards the algorithm promised, the house, the job, the status, and yet the psychological despair is overwhelming.
Which perfectly brings us to the breaking point. If society is providing this external software, what happens when our internal hardware fundamentally rejects the code?
What happens when the system crashes?
Yeah, what happens then?
What's fascinating here is how we can define that internal hardware. This is where we introduce the concept of Cindy.
Cindy.
We have to contrast this external artificial morality with the raw, unprogrammed reality of Cindy, which is the term the source uses to describe our internal authentic conscience.
Cindy, it's a brilliant concept. It sounds sharp, almost surgical.
It is entirely surgical because it cuts through the noise. Cindy is not something you are taught in a classroom.
Right.
It's not something you read in a religious manual or absorb from a viral cultural trend. It is a fundamental, almost biological truth that an individual feels deep within their core.
So a societal morality is the bloated software update we blindly accept?
Cindy is the original, uncorrupted operating system that shipped with the hardware.
It acts like a glitch in society's matrix.
It really does. It is that sudden, inexplicable friction you experience when society tells you with absolute, unyielding certainty that something is right or normal.
but your gut is absolutely screaming at you that it's wrong.
Yes.
We have all felt that physical sensation. You are sitting in a corporate meeting and someone proposes a strategy that is entirely socially acceptable within the context of your industry.
Sure.
Everyone nods. The PowerPoint presentation is flawless. It is the agreed upon morality of the boardroom. But inside, your stomach just drops.
You feel this tight, uncomfortable knot forming.
Yeah, a knot. You cannot even articulate why it is wrong yet, but the revulsion is physical. That is Cindy waking up.
And awakening to your Cindy is initially a profoundly isolating experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
When you finally stop copy-pasting, you look around and suddenly realize that you no longer speak the same language as the people you have known for years.
Because you are no longer running the same algorithm.
Exactly. The things they care deeply about, the promotions, the gossip, the status symbols, they suddenly appear utterly absurd to you.
You become entirely incompatible with the network. Your data formats just don't match anymore.
This is where the fundamental struggle for human freedom truly begins. It is the brutal, exhausting battle to stop performing the expectations of external morality and start listening to the quiet and, frankly, often deeply inconvenient voice of your true conscience.
I have to pause and push back on this, though, because there is a glaring risk here that we just cannot ignore.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's look at this pragmatically. If we strip away the societal code and just champion everyone following their internal compass, aren't we just handing out permission slips for total narcissism?
Ah, I see where you're going.
I mean, I'm thinking about the guy who decides to send in and tells him he doesn't need to pay his employees a living wage. Or the person who constantly cuts in line at the grocery store because their internal truth says their time is more valuable than everyone else's.
Right, the bad actors.
Yeah. If we validate the destruction of the algorithm, what stops society from collapsing into absolute violent chaos? Don't we desperately need the copy-pasted rules just to survive a trip to the grocery store or not crash at an intersection?
You are hitting on the classic trap people fall into when discussing radical individualism, and it requires us to draw a very hard line between ego-driven appetite and actual conscience.
Okay. Ego versus conscience.
Yes.
Okay.
We have to differentiate between functional logistical agreements and deep existential morality. Cindy Die is not an excuse to act like a sociopath in traffic.
Thank goodness.
We agree that a red light means stop, not because it's a profound moral truth, but because it's a logistical necessity to prevent a 10-car pileup.
So running a red light isn't a brave stand against the algorithm. It's just reckless entitlement.
Precisely. The person cutting in line or exploiting their workers is not operating from Cindy. They're operating from unevolved ego and greed.
Which, ironically, are often highly encouraged by certain facets of the societal algorithm itself.
That's a great point. They really are. Cindy is about authentic alignment in the domains that define our humanity. It dictates who you love, the integrity of the art you create, how deeply you connect with others, and what you dedicate your brief, finite time on this earth to achieving. Exactly. True Cindy does not create chaos. It is actually incredibly ordered. It just answers to a higher internal authority of profound empathy and truth, rather than a superficial external authority of compliance and fear.
It is the stark difference between obeying a rule because you are terrified of being fined or punished and doing the right thing because your internal architecture just demands it.
Right. If the threat of punishment vanished tomorrow, the person running on the algorithm would immediately start looting.
Wow. Yeah. And the person running on Cindy would continue to act with integrity.
And when that internal alignment, that integrity, is constantly denied by society, when the algorithm relentlessly tries to force you to betray your Cindy for the sake of conformity, it leads to a very specific, necessary kind of pushback.
This pushes us into the mechanics of rebellion then. How do we take that internal knot in our stomach and translate it into actual action?
This raises an important question. How does the internal glitch become an external movement? The philosophy in our sources explores the concept of protest, using the historical spirit of Protestantism as a structural metaphor.
I found that framework incredibly helpful, not looking at it as a specific religious doctrine to debate, but looking at the mechanics of what a protest actually is.
Exactly. If you strip away the theology and look at the historical metaphor of protesting an established monolithic church, what was the core structural grievance.
The middleman.
Yes, it was the absolute rejection of the middleman. It was the refusal to accept that a vast, incredibly wealthy bureaucratic institution held the exclusive, copy-pasted algorithm for accessing the divine or accessing the truth.
The protest was about an individual standing up and saying, I have direct, unmediated access to the truth within myself.
I do not need to buy your indulgences, and I do not need your copy-pasted dogmas.
It is the outward manifestation of Cindy fighting back. It is the individual actively uninstalling the external software. But we have to look at how incredibly adaptive the societal algorithm is. It doesn't just crush protests, it absorbs them.
It commodifies the friction.
Exactly. Society sees people starting to wake up, starting to reject the copy-paste algorithm, and the system immediately pivots. It says, oh, you want to rebel? We can monetize that. Here is the officially sanctioned Rebel starter pack.
It's everywhere.
You see it constantly. The algorithm will sell you a Che Guevara t-shirt manufactured in a sweatshop. It will sell you the leather jacket that signifies you are a nonconformist.
It will curate a specific playlist of anti-establishment music on a massive corporate showing platform.
Yes. It turns authentic existential friction into a harmless lifestyle brand.
This defangs the movement entirely. You think you're listening to your Cindy, but you've just copy-pasted the Rebel algorithm instead of the accountant algorithm.
You are still clicking I agree to a set of terms and conditions. They just have an edgier font.
That's exactly it, an edgier font.
Which really forces us to interrogate our own actions relentlessly. How do we differentiate between genuine, authentic protests driven by our internal conscience and this performative rebellion that society simply handed to us on a different platter?
The diagnostic tool for that is to look at your relationship with the audience.
The audience.
Yeah. Performative rebellion still cares deeply about what society thinks. The performative rebel needs the system to look at them and validate their uniqueness.
They need the applause for their bravery.
Exactly. True Cindy is entirely indifferent to the audience.
True Cindy doesn't care if the societal algorithm is looking at all.
True Cindy is often profoundly unglamorous. It is quiet. It is the steadfast refusal to participate in a destructive corporate system, even if no one gives you an award for your bravery.
Even if you struggle to pay your rent as a result.
Yes, it is the agonizing daily effort to peel away the layers of conditioned responses rather than just putting on a different costume.
To bring this abstract philosophy down to earth, we can look at how this exact struggle, the suffocating algorithm versus the uncompromising authentic conscience, played out in the lives of some of the most visible cultural icons in modern history.
Examining these specific case studies from the sources is vital because they show us the massive global ripple effects of what happens when Cindy refuses to yield to the system.
Let's look at Steve Jobs. He is highlighted as the ultimate modern avatar of rejecting the copy-paste mentality.
He really is.
And when you dive into the history of the tech industry, it is a perfect illustration. If you look at the computer industry in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the entire market was running on a very rigid algorithm.
Bearish did.
Companies like IBM dictated the morality of the technology. Computers were massive, gray, utilitarian machines designed exclusively for corporate accountants and hobbyist engineers.
The societal algorithm for technology at that time dictated that function was the only metric that mattered.
Aesthetics didn't exist.
The idea of incorporating beauty, personal empowerment, or intuitive design into a computer was considered entirely absurd. It was outside the parameters of the accepted code.
But Jobs' Cindy, his deeply internalized conscience regarding what technology should mean for human potential, demanded a completely different reality.
He famously dropped in on a calligraphy class at Reed College, absorbing the beauty of typography.
Something utterly useless to the algorithmic computer industry.
Right. When he built the Macintosh, he insisted on multiple typefaces and proportional spacing. He didn't just look at the beige boxes and say, let's make these 3% faster.
He felt a profound, almost violent friction with the dogmas of his time. He threw the entire rulebook out the window and forced physical reality, hardware engineering, and consumer behavior to bend to his internal truth.
And we must remember the mechanics of his punishment for doing that.
Oh, right. The exile.
He was famously exiled from his own company. The board of directors at Apple, who represented the traditional algorithmic replicas of corporate management, found his originality impossible to manage.
He wouldn't copy-paste the standard CEO behavior, so the system ejected him.
Exactly. He endured a very public, painful wilderness period with NXT.
But because his Cindy was genuinely authentic and not just a performative corporate rebellion, it ultimately reshaped the entire world.
It did.
When he returned, he didn't just sell phones, he sold the hardware for individual empowerment. He wrote entirely new code for humanity because he refused to accept the terms and conditions of 1980s computing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can pivot from technology to culture and look at the contrast between John Lennon and Mick Jagger.
Oh, I love this part.
They serve as a brilliant illustration of how Cindy can manifest through completely different vectors of friction.
I found this part of the analysis utterly fascinating because both of these icons represent a massive pushback against the post-war stiff upper lip algorithm of polite society in the UK and America.
Right.
But they attacked the code using entirely different structural methods.
Let's start with Lennon. John Lennon often represented a deeply philosophical, intellectual, almost utopian vision of Cindy.
Yeah, he was very cerebral about it.
He wasn't just rebelling against musical constraints. He was challenging the fundamental, underlying software of human civilization. Look at the lyrics of Imagine.
Oh, perfect example.
He is asking the listener to conceptualize a reality without the most deeply entrenched, copy-pasted algorithms we possess, borders, organized religions, and hyper-capitalist possessions.
Lennon's protest was structural. When he and Yoko Ono did the bed-ins for peace, the algorithmic press mocked them mercilessly.
They didn't understand it at all.
The system thought it was absurd, but Lennon was actively, intentionally creating bizarre, nonviolent friction to force society to question the logic of its own violent code.
He was looking at the overarching software of human civilization and saying, this code is fundamentally flawed. It inevitably compiles into war and suffering. We need to delete the source code.
Now contrast that highly intellectual deconstruction with Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones.
It's night and day.
Their representation of the struggle against the algorithm was entirely visceral. It was immediate, pelvic, and physical.
It was raw, unadulterated shock to the system.
Yes. It wasn't about a utopian philosophical restructure. It was a loud, sneering, unapologetic rejection of polite society's immediate moral boundaries.
By bringing the raw sexuality and emotional grit of Delta blues into the conservative living rooms of the 1960s, Jagger was reclaiming the unprogrammed human impulses that the algorithmic society deemed shameful or inappropriate.
To put it in a scenario, Jagger was the glitch in the polite dinner party who jumps on the table and shatters the crystal glasses.
Right.
Lennon was the guy sitting calmly in the corner, painstakingly explaining to the horrified guests why the very concept of an exclusive dinner party is an artificial construct designed to perpetuate class warfare.
Both are incredibly vital expressions of the internal conscience pushing back against the external machine. They aren't just entertainers generating content. They are modern philosophers living out this massive existential tension on a global stage.
Providing humanity with blueprints for how to navigate our own internal friction.
Exactly.
Which brings me to a question for everyone listening to this right now. Think about the historical figures, the artists, or the leaders you genuinely look up to.
The ones whose biographies you devour.
Yeah. Are you admiring them simply because they amassed wealth or social status? Or deep down in your own Cindy, are you actually admiring their refusal to hit copy-paste on their lives?
You admire the immense courage it took for them to listen to their internal OS when the entire world was screaming at them to follow the established algorithm.
We idolize that authenticity because we are starving for it in our own daily lives.
We feel the heavy, suffocating weight of the algorithm every single day, and we look to these avatars for proof that survival outside the code is actually possible.
But here's the brutal reality check. We can't all be Steve Jobs.
We certainly can't.
We can't all write generation-defining anthems like John Lennon and single-handedly change the cultural landscape of the globe. Most of us have to wake up tomorrow, go to an office, pay a mortgage, and interact with the algorithm.
So how do we apply this massive, intimidating philosophical framework to our deeply ordinary lives?
That is the ultimate synthesis of this entire deep dive. The goal of this philosophy isn't to demand that you quit your job tomorrow, smash your smartphone, move to a cabin in the woods, and become a famous rebel.
Because that is just another performative script.
Exactly. The goal is the quiet, persistent journey toward authentic self-realization within the exact context of your current life.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because true freedom, according to this framework, isn't a singular cinematic event.
You don't just wake up one morning, loudly declare yourself free from the societal matrix and live happily ever after.
No, it is an ongoing, exhausting, hourly practice.
It requires an almost obsessive level of vigilance. The daily mechanics of living by Cindy mean constantly running a diagnostic check on your own motivations.
Every time you make a significant choice, or even a minor one, you have to pause and interrogate the origin of that choice.
You have to ask the hardest question. Why specifically am I doing this?
Am I choosing to pursue this promotion? Am I staying in this specific relationship? Am I posting this specific opinion on social media because I am fundamentally terrified of societal judgment?
Am I just feeding a token into the morality algorithm to avoid being punished?
Or am I taking this action from a place of deep, undeniable personal truth?
And let's be painfully honest, for most of us, 90% of the time, the initial answer is going to be that we are acting out of fear of judgment.
The algorithm is incredibly strong.
It is, and we are deeply conditioned to appease it. Breaking away from it requires an immense, often uncelebrated amount of courage.
It takes courage because living authentically almost guarantees that you will introduce friction into your personal relationships. You will inevitably disappoint people.
That is the hardest part of the equation to accept, the collateral damage of authenticity.
You will disappoint parents who mapped out a specific copy-pasted career for you. You will frustrate friends who were very comfortable with the compliant, predictable replica version of you.
The replica you is incredibly easy to manage.
But the original, you might have boundaries they don't like. You might have creative dreams they find ridiculous. You might hold nuanced opinions that make their rigid tribalism deeply uncomfortable.
It is a journey of unlearning just as much, if not more, than it is a journey of learning. You have to actively go into your mental hard drive and painstakingly uninstall the software that has been running in the background since you were in kindergarten.
You have to unlearn the deeply ingrained idea that human value is tied to a specific tax bracket.
Or that being a good person means simply never rocking the boat.
And you must replace that frantic external need for algorithmic validation with the quiet, sturdy confidence of your Cindy.
It's coming to the profound realization that true validation can never, ever come from the societal machine.
Because the machine doesn't possess the capacity to know who you actually are. It only knows what it needs you to be for its own efficient operation.
So, what does this all mean for us as we navigate the rest of our week? How do we wrap our arms around this without becoming overwhelmed by the weight of it?
It means that the very next time you feel that glitch, that sudden tightness in your chest, when you are about to agree to something you don't actually believe, or when you find yourself nodding along to a consensus that feels fundamentally hollow, do not suppress it.
To not swallow it down just to keep the peace.
Lean into the friction. Acknowledge the glitch.
That friction is the sound of your own conscience, your own humanity, desperately trying to get your attention. Let's do a quick structural recap of the incredible terrain we have covered today.
Let's do it.
Society, by its very nature, wants you to be a copy-paste replica. It wants you running smoothly on the algorithm of external morality because it makes the machine safe, predictable, and profitable.
But your ultimate freedom, the very essence of your actual humanity, lies in your ability to tune out that overwhelming noise and listen to your internal, uncorrupted conscience.
It is the only true path to self-realization. The hardest thing we all have to face when we put our phones down and step back into reality today is acknowledging how much of our lives is running on autopilot.
Think about one major decision you are actively facing right now. It could be a career pivot, a boundary you need to set in a relationship, or even just how you spend your finite free time.
Ask yourself with total brutal honesty, am I doing this because it is the accepted program? Or am I taking this step because it aligns with my deepest internal truth?
It is a heavy burden to bear, but it is the only question that truly matters if you want to be alive rather than just functioning.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, wildly provocative thought to chew on.
Well, this is a good one.
What happens when the copy-paste mechanism of society isn't just a metaphor anymore? We are actively building literal algorithms, artificial intelligence, to write our emails, to dictate our daily schedules, to generate our art, and increasingly to suggest our moral viewpoints on incredibly complex issues.
It's happening right now.
If we continue on this path, outsourcing the entire societal code to literal machines, there will come a point where following the accepted algorithm requires zero human input at all.
And when that day arrives?
When that day arrives, maybe the only thing left that will actually define us as human beings, the only thing that separates us from the machine, will be our Cindy.